It was an ordinary day, one of those rare moments where everything seemed calm and perfect. The sun was gently kissing the horizon as I walked along the beach with my daughter. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was soothing, and the soft, salty breeze caressed our faces. It was just the two of us, enjoying a peaceful afternoon, free from the usual worries of life. But little did I know, something would shatter that tranquility in an instant. As we strolled down the beach, laughing and talking about nothing in particular, I noticed my phone buzzing in my pocket. I thought nothing of it at first, assuming it was just another spam message. But then a text from my husband popped up. He had never been one to message me while I was out with our daughter, and the timing felt off. The message simply read, "I need to talk to you." That one sentence sent a shiver down my spine, and I could feel my heart start to race. Something about the way he worded it seemed different. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Little did I know, this innocent moment on the beach would soon unravel a truth I never expected, a truth that would change everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I stood there on the beach, my fingers still gripping the phone, staring at that cryptic message. I could feel the warm sand beneath my feet, the rhythmic sound of the waves crashing, but none of it seemed to matter anymore. My mind was racing. What could this possibly be about? We had been married for 8 years, and in all that time I had never received a message like that from him. We had our ups and downs like every couple, but nothing had ever felt so off. I turned to my daughter, watching her build sandcastles, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my chest. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden glow over everything, but even its beauty couldn't calm the unease that had settled in my stomach. I decided to send him a reply, something simple to mask the anxiety building up inside me. "What's wrong?" I typed, my fingers trembling slightly as I hit send. The seconds ticked by, painfully slow, each one dragging me deeper into my thoughts. Had I done something wrong? Or was this something completely unexpected? I had always prided myself on the openness and trust in our relationship. We never kept secrets. At least, I thought we didn't. When the phone buzzed again, I nearly dropped it in surprise. His response was quick, but it only made my heart race even faster. "I'm not sure how to say this," he wrote, "but I think you should come home tonight. We need to talk." His words felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just what he said, but how he said it. There was a finality in his tone, something that told me this conversation would be unlike any we had ever had before. I looked at my daughter again, watching her joyfully bury her tiny plastic shovel in the sand. She had no idea that the world around us was starting to crumble. I forced a smile, trying to hold it together for her. She deserved a mother who was calm and strong, not one who was falling apart inside. But how could I stay calm when everything in my life was suddenly in question? I excused myself from her for a moment, walking down to the water's edge. The cool water lapped at my ankles, and I stared out at the horizon, feeling like I was on the edge of a cliff, about to fall into a void I couldn't see. The message had set something off in me, something I couldn't ignore. I had to go home, but I also knew that whatever waited for me, there would change everything. As the sun began to set, the peaceful beach seemed to mock me. Everything was perfect, and yet everything was wrong. I felt the weight of the moment settling on me. What had happened to us? Why was my husband acting so distant? The anxiety grew, gnawing at me as I turned to walk back to my daughter. I knew that the truth was just a conversation away, but I wasn't ready to face it. Not yet. But as much as I tried to push the thought aside, deep down, I knew things would never be the same. As we left the beach and headed home, I could feel the distance between me and my daughter growing. She was so carefree, so innocent, unaware of the storm cloud hovering over us. She chattered about her day, about the sandcastle she built, and the ice cream she wanted to get later. But with every word she spoke, I felt myself becoming more and more distant from her, from everything around me. I nodded, smiled, and tried to pay attention, but my mind was trapped in a whirlwind of thoughts. My fingers kept replaying the message from my husband over and over again. "We need to talk." I kept asking myself, what was he hiding? What could possibly be so serious that he couldn't tell me over the phone? We had always talked things through before, no matter how difficult the conversation. It was one of the things that had always made our marriage strong. But now the silence between us seemed deafening. The drive back home felt longer than usual. The usual comfort of being in my own car, surrounded by the familiar sights of our neighborhood, no longer brought me the reassurance it once did. Everything felt foreign, like I was walking into a house that didn't belong to me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. By the time we got home, my daughter had already fallen asleep in the back seat. I carefully unbuckled her, carrying her into the house, trying not to wake her up. Her soft breaths and the warmth of her tiny body in my arms almost gave me the strength I needed to face whatever was about to unfold. If nothing else, I wanted to protect her. She deserved to grow up in a home filled with love and security, not one filled with secrets. I gently placed her down in her room, tucking her under her blanket. As I left the room, I paused for a moment, watching her sleep peacefully. I wanted to believe that nothing would ever threaten her sense of safety, but deep down, I knew the world could change in an instant. The house was eerily quiet as I walked toward the living room. My husband's car was in the driveway, but I still hadn't seen him. He was probably in his study, or maybe he had already gone to the kitchen to start dinner. I had no idea what to expect, but whatever it was, I wasn't ready. I took a deep breath before stepping into the living room. The light from the chandelier cast long shadows on the walls, and everything seemed to be in its place. But it all felt off. As I moved toward the study, I heard the faint sound of the television playing in the background. My husband was sitting in the recliner, but he didn't turn to face me when I entered. He just kept his eyes on the screen, as though he was avoiding eye contact. For a moment, I stood there, unsure of what to say. Should I ask him what was going on? Should I push for answers right away, or wait for him to speak first? I didn't want to come across as accusing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to uncover something that would shatter the life I thought we had built together. "Hey," I finally said, my voice a little shaky. He didn't respond at first, and for a moment I wondered if he had even heard me. "Hey," I repeated, this time louder. Still nothing. It was as if he was deliberately ignoring me. A cold wave of frustration washed over me. I had never felt so distant from him. This wasn't the man I married. This wasn't the person who once promised to never hide anything from me. I walked over to him, standing in front of the recliner. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm now. He glanced up at me, his face a mix of guilt and something I couldn't quite place. He seemed to hesitate, as if trying to decide how to start. I didn't want to wait any longer. I needed answers. "Please," I said, my voice softer now, "just tell me what's going on." For the first time in what felt like hours, he looked me in the eyes. His gaze was intense, but there was something haunting about it. I could see the unease in his face, the tension in his jaw. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words didn't come out right away. He took a deep breath, as though steeling himself for something that would hurt both of us. "I've been seeing someone," he said, the words coming out in a rush like he couldn't say them fast enough. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I never planned it. But it did. And now I don't know how to fix this." The world seemed to stop spinning. For a moment, everything around me went completely silent. I stared at him, my brain trying to process what he had just said. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. "What do you mean, seeing someone?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My heart felt like it had dropped into my stomach, and I couldn't breathe. I don't know how to explain this," he stammered. "It wasn't planned, okay? It just happened. I didn't want it to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." "Who?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Who is it? How long has this been going on?" He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. That silence, that refusal to tell me the truth, only made my heart ache more. I could feel the weight of his betrayal sinking in, and with it came the overwhelming fear of what this meant for our future. What would happen to us? What would happen to our daughter? The room seemed to close in around me as the weight of his words settled in. I stood frozen, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? How could he have done this to me? To our family? To everything we had built? My thoughts tumbled over one another, and the room felt too small, too suffocating. My husband shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with the silence hanging between us. I could feel the tension crackling in the air, but I couldn't bring myself to speak just yet. I needed him to answer my questions, truthfully. "Who is she?" I asked again, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "How long has this been going on?" His silence was deafening. He stared at his hands as if searching for the right words, but they didn't come. The longer he hesitated, the more my heart twisted in pain. The fact that he couldn't even look me in the eyes told me everything I needed to know. Finally, he let out a deep breath. "Her name is Julia. I met her at work. It just started with little things, talking about work, about life. I never thought it would go this far. It was a mistake, a huge mistake, but it happened, and I couldn't stop it." A cold, bitter laugh escaped me. "You couldn't stop it? You couldn't stop yourself from lying to me? From betraying everything we have? What the hell do you expect me to say to that?" The tears I had been holding back finally spilled over, but even as they fell, I was too angry to care. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed the signs, the late nights at work, the sudden distance between us? I felt like a fool. How had I allowed myself to believe that everything was fine when it was falling apart right before my eyes? "Please," he begged, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I know I've hurt you, but I want to make things right. I'll do anything. Please just don't leave me." His words felt hollow, like empty promises. How could I trust him now? How could I ever believe anything he said again after this? I took a deep breath, trying to hold on to whatever remnants of calm I had left. "You don't get it, do you?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. "It's not just about you and me. It's about everything you've done to this family, to our daughter. You've shattered everything we built, and now you expect me to fix it?" I could see the guilt in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. He could apologize all he wanted, but the truth was, nothing would ever be the same again. "How could you be so selfish?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "How could you throw away everything we had for a fleeting affair, for someone else? Was I not enough for you? Was our family not enough?" He reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away before he could make contact. "Don't touch me," I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. "I can't even look at you right now." The words burned in my throat, but they were the only thing that seemed to make sense. This man, the man I had trusted more than anyone in my life, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And as much as I wanted to forgive him, I knew I couldn't. Not now. Not ever. He didn't speak again. The silence between us was unbearable. I could feel the air thick with the weight of everything that had been said and unsaid. What could he possibly say now? How could he possibly fix the mess he had created? There was no way back from this. I turned away from him, unable to face the man who had once been my partner, my confidant, the father of my child. Everything felt like a lie, a carefully constructed illusion that had crumbled to dust in a matter of minutes. And yet, even as the anger raged inside me, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. Sadness for the family we could have been, for the love that was lost. "I need to be alone," I muttered, my voice barely a whisper. I didn't wait for his response. I couldn't. The man I had loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who had shattered everything I held dear. I left the living room without another word, my heart heavy with the weight of the betrayal. As I walked up the stairs to our bedroom, I couldn't help but feel like I was walking away from everything I had ever known. But in reality, I was walking towards something new, something that would be painful but necessary. The life I had once known had ended, and I had no idea what the future would hold. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living in the past, in a lie. And as I closed the door behind me, I realized that this was the first step in moving on, no matter how much it hurt. I sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on my chest. The silence in the house was suffocating. My mind was racing, yet at the same time, it felt as though everything had slowed down to a standstill. I could still hear his voice echoing in my head, begging for forgiveness, pleading for a second chance. But what did that even mean anymore? What would it take to fix this? I closed my eyes, trying to push the thoughts away. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt alone. Not just physically, but emotionally. The man I had built a life with, the man I had shared my dreams and fears with, was no longer the person I thought he was. He had shattered my trust in the most devastating way. And as much as he pleaded for another chance, I knew that rebuilding what had been broken was no longer possible. I thought about our daughter. What would this do to her? The love we had once shared seemed so trivial now, so easily undone. Could she ever understand the betrayal? Could I? I had always believed that love was about trust and commitment, but now it felt like those ideals were nothing more than fragile concepts, easily broken by a single mistake. What did that mean for me, for my future? As I lay down, staring at the ceiling, the tears came again, not in violent outbursts, but quietly, like the slow drip of water, each drop a reminder of the pain that lingered. I felt numb. The life I had known was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. I thought about what was next. Should I stay and try to make things work for the sake of our family? Or should I leave, walk away from everything we had built together? The future felt so uncertain. The decision weighed heavily on me, but I couldn't bring myself to make it just yet. In the days that followed, I kept to myself, trying to process the flood of emotions. The house, once a place of warmth, now felt cold and empty. The lingering presence of the man I had once loved only made it harder to breathe. Every word he spoke felt like an echo of the past, and nothing he said seemed to matter anymore. I couldn't find the strength to listen to his apologies, to give him any more of my energy. He had already taken enough from me. Eventually, I had to make a choice, even if I wasn't ready for it. I knew that life couldn't go on like this. I couldn't keep living in a relationship built on lies and betrayal. I had to choose myself, choose healing over the uncertainty of a broken marriage. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the only one I could make. The truth was, I had already started the process of letting go. I wasn't sure when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I had realized that I deserved more. More than the lies, more than the pain, more than the broken promises. I had to move on, even if I didn't know where the road would lead. The road ahead was dark and unknown, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never allow myself to be someone's second choice again. And as I stood up to pack the few things I had left, the weight that had burdened me for so long seemed to lift, if only for a moment. I wasn't free yet, but I was on my way. I had taken the first step, and that, in itself, was enough. As I stood there, the weight of everything crashing down on me, I realized something important. Pain doesn't last forever. It may feel unbearable in the moment, but it is only a phase, a chapter that eventually ends, whether we want it to or not. What mattered now was how I would move forward from this. I had the power to reshape my life, to rediscover who I truly was beyond the hurt and betrayal. I thought about what I had learned, about love, about trust, about myself. The one thing I had come to understand was that love can be beautiful, but it can also be fragile, easily shattered. And when it breaks, you're left with the pieces of your heart scattered across the floor, hoping you can somehow put it back together. But you can't rush that process. Healing takes time. I didn't have all the answers, and I wasn't sure of the road ahead. But I knew that this chapter was over. The truth had been uncovered, and now I had to decide what came next. I had to move on, even if I wasn't sure where I was going. One thing was clear. I would never let myself be caught in the same lie again.